The Broken Alliance, approximately 800 words, third person, simple English. Suspenseful, the war began with hope, but it ended with betrayal. For many years, humans had stood side by side with their alien allies, fighting against a common enemy that threatened. The stars. They trusted the Alliance, they trusted the promises, and they trusted the warriors who called themselves friends. But on the darkest day of the war, that trust was broken. The human fleet was trapped on the battlefield, surrounded by enemy ships, fire raining down across the void of space. They called for aid, they begged for reinforcements, and the Allies promised, "Hold on, we are coming." But the Allies never came. Instead, they turned their ships away, retreating into the shadows of the galaxy, leaving humanity alone to bleed on. Earth families watched their loved ones vanish into silence. On colonies, children waited for fathers and mothers who never returned. The betrayal cut deeper than the wounds of war. It was not just defeat, it was abandonment. And from that day, the Alliance was dead. Among the survivors was Commander Marcus Hawley, a man who had seen the battlefield burn with his own eyes. His ship barely survived, crawling back to orbit with smoke trailing behind. He lost friends, he lost brothers, and he lost faith. When he stood before the Council of Humanity, his words burned like fire. "They left us to die," he said, his voice steady. "So now we take everything they have." Those words became the spark. A broken people now found a reason to rise again. The betrayal did not end humanity, it gave them something far more dangerous: purpose. In the ruins of Earth's once proud cities, people gathered around fires. They whispered stories of the betrayal. Stories of friends abandoned. Stories of sacrifice that had been ignored. The hunger for survival grew into something else: revenge. No one forgot. No one forgave. Children who had lost parents now dreamed of flying warships. Mothers who had lost sons now built weapons in hidden factories. Engineers, scientists, soldiers all swore the same oath: never betrayed again. Far out in space, hidden from the eyes of the galaxy, humanity began to rebuild. Not with trust, not with allies, but with steel and fury. Secret shipyards grew in the darkness, their frames glowing with fire as new warships were born. The galaxy thought humans were broken, weak, and finished. But in silence, humanity sharpened its blade. Marcus Hawley walked among the shipyards, his eyes hard, his face lined with scars of war. He remembered the friends who died calling for help that never came. He remembered the faces of allies who promised loyalty but delivered betrayal. He swore he would never forget. To him, vengeance was not only justice, it was survival. On the frontier worlds, whispers spread. The betrayed humans were gathering. The betrayed humans were plotting. The betrayed humans would rise again, and though the galaxy mocked those whispers, deep down, fear began to grow. At night, under the shattered sky of Earth, a banner was raised, black, with a single red star. It was not a flag of peace, nor a flag of surrender. It was the flag of retribution. And when it flew high above the ruins, the people of Earth knelt and swore their loyalty. "Never again shall we trust," they said. "Never again shall we bow," they said. "If they betrayed us once, we will take everything they ever had." The hook of vengeance was set deep. What began as survival now turned into something larger. It was not about reclaiming what was lost. It was about making the betrayers feel the same pain, the same fire, and the same despair that humanity had felt. The first steps were small. Smugglers carried stolen parts across the stars. Refugees disguised as merchants carried weapons in secret. Every hand, every mind, every heart turned toward one goal. The galaxy thought humanity was finished, but the galaxy was wrong. In the silence of deep space, a new fleet began to awaken. Not for defense, not for peace, but for revenge. And at the center of it all stood Commander Marcus Hawley, his voice echoing across the steel halls. "They betrayed us in war," he said, his eyes burning with promise. "And now, we will take everything they have." The cities of Earth no longer shined. What once were towers of glass and steel now stood as broken skeletons, reaching into the sky like the bones of giants. The war had left scars across every street, and the betrayal had left scars across every heart. The people who survived walked through dust and silence, carrying memories heavier than their empty stomachs. Children played in craters where missiles had fallen. Mothers searched through ruins for food that did not exist. Fathers sat in silence, staring at the sky as if waiting for someone to return. But no one came. The allies who had promised safety had abandoned them. And now humanity was alone. Yet from that loneliness came something fierce. The ashes of Earth carried not only sorrow but fire. For every broken home, there was anger. For every dead child, there was a vow, and for every tear shed, there was a promise whispered into the night. We will rise again. In the underground tunnels of New York, groups of survivors gathered. They lit fires in oil drums, warming their hands while whispering about revenge. Do you think the commander will keep his word? One man asked, his voice rough. He will, an old woman replied, her eyes shining, because he has nothing left to lose. On the other side of the planet, hidden deep under the mountains of Siberia, engineers worked day and night. They built weapons from scrap, piecing together metal, wires, and dreams. What they lacked in resources, they replaced with determination. They called it the fire of the betrayed. Everywhere, people contributed. Some dug tunnels to hide ships. Others collected food for those who starved. And others spread the message. Humanity was not finished. Humanity was preparing. Commander Marcus Hawley stood on the remains of Earth's largest military base. The walls were blackened, the air smelled of smoke, and the ground was covered with the shadows of what once had been. But to him, this was not an end, it was a beginning. He spoke to the crowd gathered before him, men and women in ragged clothes, soldiers without uniforms, refugees without homes. They thought we were broken, he said, his voice loud and steady. They thought we were finished, he continued, his eyes sweeping across their faces. But we are not finished, we are reborn. The crowd answered with a roar, their voices rising like thunder in the ruins. For the first time since the betrayal, hope stirred, not hope for peace, not hope for kindness, but hope for power. They wanted justice, they wanted revenge, and they wanted it soon. In the ashes of London, a secret council met. Leaders of surviving colonies and fleets gathered in hidden chambers. Maps were laid across tables, ships marked with stones, supply lines drawn in chalk. Strike where they are weak, one leader said. No mercy, another whispered, and in every plan, one truth echoed. The betrayers must pay meanwhile. Far beyond Earth, the galaxy had already forgotten. The betrayers sat in their golden halls, drinking wine and celebrating their false victory. They believed humanity was destroyed, scattered, harmless. But shadows of human ships moved quietly between the stars. They carried no banners, no names, only silence and determination on a ruined colony near Mars. A boy watched the sky. He saw a star flicker and whispered to his sister, "One day, that will be us, will rise like fire." His sister, too young to understand, smiled and held his hand. But the boy's eyes were hard, far older than his years. Even children now dreamed of war. In the secret shipyard orbiting Saturn's rings, a new kind of vessel was born. It was rough, unfinished, and built from wreckage of fallen fleets. But when its engines roared to life, the workers cheered. The galaxy thought humans were crawling in the dirt, but here they were building weapons in the shadows. The ashes of Earth became more than ruins. They became symbols. Every broken tower, every burned street, every crater reminded humanity of what was lost. And instead of fear, it gave them strength. The galaxy would one day look at Earth and remember not its fall, but its rise, Commander. Marcus Hawley looked at the stars with cold eyes. They think we are weak, he whispered, but they will soon know the truth. His hand touched the railing of his ship, his heart heavy but unyielding. The betrayers had taken everything. Now humanity would take it back, piece by piece, star by star, world by world. And as the ashes of Earth drifted in the wind, a new vow echoed across the ruins, a vow carried by every survivor, every refugee, every soldier. We are the children of ashes, they said. We are the fire of betrayal, they said. And we will burn until nothing remains of those who betrayed us. The galaxy believed that humanity had fallen into silence. They thought the survivors of Earth would fade away, lost in hunger and grief. But in the ashes, something greater was born. It began with an oath, whispered by soldiers, mothers, fathers, and even children, an oath that would spread from ruins to stars, carrying one promise: retribution. Commander Marcus Hale stood before a gathering of survivors in the underground halls of the Siberian bunkers. The air was cold, the lights flickered, but the fire in their eyes was enough to warm the darkness. He raised his hand, scarred and steady. "Never again will we trust," he declared, his voice echoing against the stone walls. "Never again will we bow. Never again will we wait for help that never comes." The crowd answered with a roar, their fists raised, their voices shaking the tunnels. Never again. The oath of retribution was not written in books. It was carved into hearts, carried in whispers, and burned into the minds of every survivor. It spread across hidden colonies, across scattered fleets, and across refugee camps where broken families tried to live again. No matter where they were, humans repeated the same vow. For every drop of blood shed, we will answer with fire in the deep mines of Mars. Workers turned their tools into weapons. They etched the words of the oath into the steel, so that every blade carried the weight of betrayal. In the hidden shipyards of Saturn, engineers carved the oath into the hulls of rising warships. Every vessel born from the ruins carried the mark of vengeance, and on the farthest colonies, children wrote the words into the dirt, swearing their lives to a cause they barely understood but fully believed. The galaxy soon heard rumors, whispers that humanity was rebuilding not for survival, but for revenge. The betrayers laughed, mocking the idea of a broken species daring to rise again. But behind their laughter, fear grew. They knew the will of humans was dangerous, and now that will had been sharpened by betrayal. In the capital of the betrayers' empire, their council gathered. "They are nothing," one alien leader hissed, his golden robes flowing. "They are ashes," another sighed, his jeweled hands waving in dismissal. But a younger voice trembled in the chamber. "Then why do the stars whisper of their oath?" The room fell silent, for even they knew rumors had power, and oaths could move mountains back on Earth. Marcus Hale walked among the ruins of Washington. His boots crunched over broken glass. His shadow stretched across shattered walls. He stopped before a half-collapsed statue, once a symbol of peace, now a reminder of failure. He looked at the crowd behind him, soldiers, civilians, children, and he spoke again. "They thought betrayal would end us," he said, "but betrayal has made us stronger." His voice grew louder, steady as steel. "They took everything we had, so now we will take everything they have." The people shouted his words back, repeating them until they shook the ruins. It was no longer just Marcus Hale's promise, it was everyone's. The oath of retribution had become the soul of humanity. Ships began to leave Earth again, not as traders, not as diplomats, but as hunters. Small fleets slipped into the shadows, striking at weak convoys, stealing supplies, and vanishing before enemy warships could respond. Each victory, no matter how small, carried the oath with it. Each raid sent fear deeper into alien hearts. Every loss the betrayers suffered was a reminder humans had not forgiven. Humans had not forgotten. The oath also gave unity. No more divisions of colony and homeland, no more rivalries of nations. For the first time in history, all of humanity spoke with one voice. It was the voice of vengeance, and it shook the galaxy. In refugee camps on the moons of Jupiter, children repeated the words at night before sleep. In dark halls of hidden councils, leaders repeated the words before decisions. And in the silence of space, Soldiers whispered the oath before battle. The words had become more powerful than any weapon, for they reminded every human why they fought, why they built, why they rose one night, under the broken stars of Earth. Marcus Halle stood with his officers around a glowing map. They pointed to colonies, supply lines, trade hubs of the betrayers. Each one was marked in red. Each one was a target, and as the officers nodded, Halle whispered the oath once more. They betrayed us in war, he said softly, and for that, we will take everything they have. The oath spread farther, carried on stolen signals, hidden broadcasts, and even whispers among alien servants. Soon, even the betrayers' people began to hear it, and some wondered what would happen when humans truly came. What would happen when the fire of betrayal reached their worlds? The galaxy had seen humans fight for survival, but it had never seen humans fight for vengeance. Now, bound together by the oath of retribution, humanity was no longer just surviving. They were preparing, and when the time came, the galaxy would remember not the betrayal, but the fire it created. The oath was sworn, the fleets were rising, and humanity was no longer silent. But Marcus Halle knew something important. Vengeance was not won in one battle. It was won in shadows, in patience, in striking the weakest link. The betrayers were powerful. Their empire stretched across the stars. They had fleets larger than anything humanity could build so soon. But Marcus understood a truth the galaxy had forgotten. Even giants can fall if their legs are cut. In the hidden war room beneath the mountains of Earth, maps glowed across a massive table. Red marks showed the betrayers' strongholds, fortresses, capital worlds, massive fleets. Blue marks showed their supply lines, trade convoys, resource stations, fuel depots. Marcus pointed to the blue, his voice low but sharp. "We will not fight their strength," he said. "We will break their weakness." The first strike came in silence. A small human fleet, only 3 ships, moved through the dark beyond Saturn. They carried no flags, no signals, no names. They were ghosts in the void. When they reached the betrayers' convoy, a line of ships heavy with food and fuel, they attacked like wolves. The battle lasted minutes. When it ended, the convoy burned, and humanity had its first taste of revenge. News spread quickly. At first, the betrayers laughed, calling it the act of desperate survivors. But then it happened again and again. A trade fleet vanishing near the colonies of Vega, a fuel station exploding into fire near the rim of the galaxy, a mining world falling silent overnight. Every strike was small, but every strike left the betrayers weaker. In the ashes of Earth, people listened to the reports. For the first time, smiles returned. "They bleed as we bled," one man whispered. "They starve as we starved," a mother said. The oath was being fulfilled, not by promises, but by actions on the alien capital world. The council grew restless. How can the humans do this? One leader shouted, "They have no fleets, no allies, no power." But another voice trembled in fear. "They have something worse than power," he said. "They have nothing left to lose." In the dark hangars of Mars, pilots prepared for the next raid. They painted their ships with marks of vengeance, names of fallen friends, names of burned cities. One pilot whispered before launch, "This one is for my brother," another said. "This one is for my mother." And when they flew not as soldiers but as avengers. Marcus Halle watched every strike with careful eyes. He did not seek glory. He sought pressure. Every raid was chosen to cut deeper. Every attack was meant to remind the betrayers they could not escape the shadows of humanity. He told his officers, "Do not chase victories, chase their fear." And fear spread faster than fire. Alien merchants began refusing to travel through human-claimed space. Supply shortages shook alien colonies. Soldiers of the betrayers found themselves hungry. Fleets stranded without fuel, and in every whisper, the same words echoed, "The humans are coming." On one lonely outpost near the edge of the betrayers' empire, an alien commander received a message. It was only 5 words, burned into his screen. "This is for the betrayed. Hours later, his station was gone. Reduced to silence and ash, the galaxy began to watch closely now. Other alien races, once silent, began to whisper, "If the humans can strike the Empire, perhaps the Empire is not untouchable." Hope flickered in oppressed worlds. For the first time in centuries, the betrayers looked weaker, back on Earth, in the ruins of the old cities. Children cheered when ships returned from raids, the survivors sang songs of vengeance around fires. It was not just war anymore, it was justice. Every raid gave them food, fuel, and weapons. But more than that, it gave them belief. One night Marcus Halley stood before his fleet. Their ships were patched with scars, their weapons stolen, their engines held together with wires and prayers. But their eyes burned with fire. He raised his hand and spoke. "They think us weak, but weakness can become strength," he said. "They think us broken, but broken blades still cut." And then he smiled, cold and sharp. "They betrayed. You was in war, and now we strike until they bleed." The crowd of soldiers shouted back, "Until they bleed." Their voices shook the steel halls, carrying the promise of endless vengeance. The betrayers did not know it yet, but humanity had already chosen the path, not to rush into grand battles, not to waste lives in pride, but to strike the weakest link, again and again, until the Empire collapsed from within, and in the silence of space, where the stars watched without judgment, the human fleets prepared for the next strike. They would not stop, they would not rest, because betrayal had forged them into something new. Predators, waiting in the dark, hungering for justice. The galaxy began to whisper, something was happening. In the shadows, convoys were burning, supply lines were cut, colonies were falling silent. The betrayers tried to hide the truth, but fear cannot be hidden, and soon, even their own people began to ask the same question. What if the humans are not finished? At first, the Empire dismissed the attacks. "Just bandits," their admirals said, waving their jeweled hands. "Just rebels," their ministers whispered. But when a fleet of 30 ships vanished without a trace near the Vega Passage, the laughter stopped. The Empire could no longer deny it. The humans were rising again. In the golden halls of the Empire's council, panic spread. High Lords sat on their thrones, voices raised in fear and anger. "They strike like ghosts." One shouted, "They strike where we are weak, not where we are strong." Another cried, "They are only survivors," one lord hissed, trying to sound confident. But even he trembled when he spoke, because survivors who have nothing left are the most dangerous of all. Reports came daily, a fuel depot gone, its flames still burning across the stars, a governor's palace reduced to ash, the words "for the betrayed" carved into its stones, entire worlds whispering that humans had passed through the night. No one ever saw them arrive, no one ever saw them leave, but the damage was always there. The common people of the Empire began to feel it. Markets grew empty, food grew scarce, soldiers grew hungry. The poor whispered stories of the betrayed humans who were coming for vengeance. Children played games in the streets, pretending to be humans striking down cruel lords. Fear and respect spread together like wildfire on Earth. The news reached the survivors when a convoy was destroyed. The people cheered. When a colony fell silent, they sang, for them. Every strike was not just revenge, it was justice. And justice gave them hope in ruined cities. Fires burned bright as people celebrated victories they never thought they would. Commander Marcus Halley studied every report with cold precision. He saw how the Empire trembled, how fear spread faster than truth. He knew they were still strong, their fleets still massive, their army still countless. But he also knew one thing the Empire had forgotten. Fear is a weapon, and it was sharper than any blade. He told his officers, "We will not face them head on, not yet. We will cut them piece by piece, world by world, until their people doubt them, until their soldiers break, until their empire falls from within." The officers nodded, their faces hard, their eyes filled with fire. They all carried the same oath in their hearts. never betrayed again. In the alien palaces, rulers tried to hide their fear with silk and jewels, but behind closed doors, their voices cracked. What if they come here? One lord whispered in terror, "They will not dare." Another answered quickly, but his hands shook. And in their silence, they all thought the same thing. The humans dare anything. Meanwhile, alien civilians who once mocked humans now whispered prayers to them. "Maybe they will punish our lords," they said in the dark. "Maybe they will bring change." The humans had become more than soldiers. They had become a legend, a story that even the children of their enemies believed on the battlefield. The Empire's fleets grew restless. Captains refused to travel without escorts. Merchants paid fortunes for safe routes, but still, the humans struck. Always unseen, always unexpected, always merciless. It was as if the void itself carried their vengeance. In the ruins of Earth, Marcus Halle stood before his people. His voice thundered through the broken halls. "They betrayed us in war. But look at them now. They tremble at shadows." The people roared with approval. Children raised sticks as swords. Old men lifted broken rifles, and mothers shouted with pride. The fire of vengeance burned brighter than ever. One night, as the Empire's council debated in fear, a message appeared. On every screen across their capital world, it was simple, only 7 words. Glowing in red, "You left us to die. Now we come." The city fell silent. The council froze in terror, for those words carried not just threat, but promise. The Empire trembled. And in the silence of deep space, humanity prepared its next move. They had taken the first steps of vengeance. Now they were ready for something greater. The galaxy would soon see not just raids, not just shadows, but the full fire of a people who refused to die. And as Marcus Halle looked at the stars, he whispered the words that now belonged to every human. "They betrayed us in war. So we will take everything they have." The Empire thought the raids were all humanity could do. They believed the humans were nothing but shadows in the night. But the shadows were only the beginning, for in the hidden shipyards, deep in the cold silence of space, something greater was rising, the reckoning fleet. Far beyond Saturn's rings, inside caverns carved into ice, engineers worked without rest. Their hands bled from sharp metal. Their faces burned from welding sparks, but they never stopped. Every plate of steel carried the memory of betrayal. Every engine was built with fury, and every cannon was forged with the fire of vengeance. At first, the ships looked broken, patched together from wreckage, but when their engines roared, the stars trembled. These were not fragile crafts. They were monsters of steel, dreadnoughts larger than any humanity had ever built before. Each one armed with weapons stolen from alien tech, fused with human genius. And each one bore a single mark across its hull, a red star, the symbol of retribution. Commander Marcus Halle stood on the bridge of the first dreadnought. It stretched like a city across the void, its armor black and sharp, its guns silent but waiting. He placed his hand on the steel wall and whispered, "You are more than a ship, you are our answer." When the fleet was revealed to the soldiers, the air shook with cheers. Men and women raised their fists, tears in their eyes. No longer would they fight as scattered raiders. No longer would they hide in shadows. Now they had a fleet that could challenge empires. Now they had a fleet that would carry their oath into the heart of the betrayers. The first test came at the edge of the Vega Passage. The Empire sent a fleet of 50 ships to crush what they thought was a small human group. But when the reckoning fleet arrived, the stars lit with fire. The dreadnoughts moved like beasts, their cannons tearing through enemy shields. Alien ships exploded one after another. In less than an hour, the Empire's mighty fleet was gone. The survivors whispered in terror, "They have dreadnoughts. The humans have dreadnoughts." The news spread across the galaxy like wildfire. No longer were the humans just raiders. Now they were conquerors. Alien rulers who once mocked humanity now sat in silence. Alien soldiers who once laughed now trembled. At the thought of facing them, The Reckoning Fleet had changed everything. On Earth, the survivors gathered around screens and radios, listening to the reports. When they heard of the victory, they wept with joy. For the first time since the betrayal, they did not feel weak. They felt strong. Children chanted in the streets, "The Reckoning Fleet! The Reckoning Fleet!" Even the old and broken stood tall, their hearts lifted by the promise of revenge. Marcus Halley looked at the stars from the bridge, his officers standing beside him. "We are no longer hunted," he said, his voice cold. "We are the hunters." "Now," his fleet answered with silence, not because they feared him, but because they believed him. They all knew what came next. The raids had been the beginning, the fear had been the weapon, but now it was time to strike openly, boldly, without mercy. The Empire panicked. They called for reinforcements from every sector. They tried to hide their losses, but the galaxy had already seen the truth. The humans were not only alive, they were winning. Their dreadnoughts were stronger than any ship the Empire had ever built. Their soldiers fought like demons, carrying the weight of betrayal in their eyes. Whispers turned into screams. On alien streets, the people asked, "If the humans can defeat fleets of 50, who will stop them?" In alien palaces, lords argued, "If they reach our capital, our world will burn." The Empire trembled, not just from fear of defeat, but from fear of collapse. Their allies began to doubt them. Their people began to resent them, and humanity pushed deeper into their space. In the War Council aboard the lead dreadnought, Marcus Halley stood before a map of enemy territory. He pointed at the capital world of the betrayers. His officers looked at him in silence, waiting for his command, and then he spoke. "We started with shadows," he said. "We started with whispers, with raids, with fear. But now the Reckoning Fleet is here, and we will not stop until their throne is ash." His words struck like thunder. Every officer saluted. Every soldier swore the oath again. They were no longer survivors. They were no longer refugees. They were the children of betrayal, and they had become the hammer of vengeance. The galaxy had thought humanity was finished, but now, with the Reckoning Fleet blazing across the stars, the galaxy learned the truth. Betrayal had not destroyed humanity. It had reborn them as conquerors, and as the dreadnoughts roared into the void, one truth echoed across the stars: the humans were coming, and nothing would stop them. The Reckoning Fleet cut through the stars like fire. Everywhere they went, the betrayers fell. Worlds once proud now burned, supply lines shattered, fleets scattered like dust. The galaxy had never seen such fury. And still, Marcus Halley whispered to his people, "This is not the end, not yet. Not until we take everything they have." The betrayers' empire shook. Their armies retreated. Their rulers hid in golden palaces, but humanity did not stop. Every battle carried the weight of betrayal. Every victory carried the promise of vengeance. And every human soldier swore the same oath: never betrayed again. At last the reckoning fleet reached the capital world of the betrayers, a planet of towers and domes, glowing with wealth stolen from across the galaxy. It was the heart of their empire, the throne of their lords, and now it stood in the sights of humanity. The alien council gathered in panic. "They will not dare strike here," one whispered, trembling. "They will dare anything." Another said, his face pale, "They are humans." The council chamber fell silent, for they all knew the truth. Humanity feared nothing now, for betrayal had already taken everything from them. The sky of the capital darkened as the reckoning fleet arrived. Dreadnoughts filled the heavens, their black hulls glowing with red stars. The people of the planet looked up in terror. Some screamed, some prayed, some simply fell silent. The Empire had once called humans allies, then left them to die. Now the humans had returned, not as friends, not as beggars, but as rulers. On the bridge of the lead dreadnought, Marcus Halley stood tall. His eyes burned as he looked at the enemy capital. "This is for Earth," he whispered. "This is for every child who starved, every soldier who died alone, every family left in ashes." His officers nodded, their faces grim. They too had lost everything. Now they had come to take it back. The first strike tore through the capital's orbital defenses. Alien fleets rose to meet the humans, but they shattered against the reckoning fleet. The battle lit the sky with fire. Explosions painted the heavens red. For every human ship that fell, 3 of the enemy burned. The galaxy watched in silence as the once great empire was broken apart piece by piece. At last, the capital itself lay helpless. The humans could have destroyed it, could have turned it into ash. But Marcus Hawley did not give the order. He stood in silence, his fists clenched, and then he spoke, his voice echoing across the fleet. "We will not simply destroy them. Destruction is too easy, too quick. We will take everything they have." Dreadnoughts descended. Human soldiers marched through alien streets, but they did not slaughter blindly. They seized the palaces, the treasuries, the fleets. The empire that had once betrayed them was stripped bare. Every resource, every ship, every weapon was taken. The betrayers were left with nothing. In the council chamber, the alien lords fell to their knees before Marcus Hawley. "You could kill us," one whispered, his voice shaking. "Yes," Marcus replied coldly. "But death is mercy, and mercy is not what you gave us." He stepped closer, his eyes like steel. "You betrayed us in war, now you will live to serve under us. Your power is gone, your fleets are ours, your world is ours. Everything you once had now belongs to humanity." The lords wept in silence. Their empire was over. Their betrayal had been answered. Across the galaxy, the news spread. The humans had not only survived, they had conquered. The betrayed had become the rulers, and their words echoed in every corner of the stars. "They betrayed us in war. So we took everything they had, back on Earth." The survivors stood beneath the ruins of their cities. But now the fires they lit were not fires of mourning. They were fires of victory. Children laughed, mothers wept, fathers stood proud for the first time. Earth was no longer weak, no longer forgotten. It was the heart of a new power, a power built not on trust, but on retribution. Marcus Hawley returned to Earth, walking through the ashes of Washington once more. But this time, he was not surrounded by silence. He was surrounded by cheers. He stood before his people, the flag of the Red Star waving above him. And he spoke the final words of the oath. "They thought betrayal would end us, but betrayal made us stronger. They thought we would fall, but we rose. And now, they have nothing left, because we took everything they had." The crowd roared, the galaxy trembled, and humanity stood taller than ever before. The age of betrayal was over. The age of retribution had begun.